Hello and welcome to another Back to Jerusalem podcast. I'm Eugene Bach, your host for this time, and I'm coming to you live on delay from somewhere inside of a car driving in Sweden. So if there's a sudden stop, you'll know why. I'm sitting here together with my wife. I think we've only done one podcast together.
Has it been just one?
I think just one.
Okay.
After all the times that I've been doing these podcasts, I think that we've only done one, and we did it on marriage. We might have done it like a 2-part series or something on marriage when we had our 20-year anniversary a couple years ago. That's already a couple years ago.
Wow.
Our 20-year anniversary was already like more than 2 years ago. But one of the things that some of you might know, some of you might not know, is that almost 4 years ago, I started to change the way that I eat. And the reason why I changed the way that I eat is because I was gaining more weight than I could lose once I got into my mid-40s. And so it was just one of those things that I was not able to do, was to keep the weight off by working out harder. Before, if I just started gaining a little bit of weight, I would just run harder. I've never been about dieting. Never. I can't think of any time I've ever really done a diet.
No.
A diet program? No.
During our marriage?
No, I've never done a diet.
Now me, on the other hand.
Yeah, you've done several diets, but I remember several years ago.
Kind of the way that it goes with women.
Yeah.
Most, or many, I should say.
But I wonder if that has anything to do with women usually living longer than men. That even though they might do sporadic diets, one after the other, is that better than never doing anything, which most men never do? And so maybe that's the reason for their longevity.
Well, if I had to guess, now this is not based on any scientific information whatsoever, but if I had to guess, I would say that it's probably the best if you could just stay at a healthy weight level throughout your entire life, to never go on any type of drastic weight loss regimens, but also to never start to add on those pounds as the years go on. And for some of us, there are periods of time in our life when we get very stressed out, or something unusual is happening, and we start to comfort eat, or we don't pay as much attention to holding on to a healthy diet.
Yeah, see, that's never, I don't even understand that. So for me, if I'm stressed out, or if I'm upset, or if I'm at a loss, or if I'm grieving, food is not on my mind at all. Food for me is like happiness. So I like to eat when I'm happy, when I'm having a good time, when I'm hanging out with friends, when right after a really massive workout, that's when I like to eat, and I like to eat a lot. And I don't even think about it, but when I was in the Marine Corps, I ate a lot. And all of my friends from the Marine Corps, this happens, Navy SEALs, Special Forces, I see it all the time. These guys that have incredibly physically demanding jobs, once they get out, balloon up, because you get into a habit of eating a certain amount of food and you never grow out of it. Like, you know me, like when I sit down to eat, it's easier for me to fast and go without food than to only eat a little food.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like there's some type of machinery in your body that once it gets going, it just wants to keep on trucking along. So I very often laugh for extended periods of time at you, because we'll start eating, and we'll have a meal, and once we've had that meal, I feel like, okay, well, the meal is over now. But about 5-10 minutes later, you get up and you go and fix a totally different meal. Then
same size, like not even I don't even draw back on the proportion, like no. it's the same size. And I can eat, without exaggeration, you and I, know this, I can eat for like 4 hours straight.
Oh, absolutely, no question. And many different types of meals in the process.
And we're not talking about little hors d'oeuvres.
No,
I don't like hors d'oeuvres. I actually, one of the worst countries in the world for me to travel to is Spain, where they do those what's it, tapas?
Yes, tapas.
Yeah, screw tapas.
Oh,
like,
okay.
I don't like the idea of you get a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this. Like, portion control's not my gifting.
No, and then one other thing that I've noticed about your eating habits is that when you have a plate full of food, let's say that there's, a piece of meat and then there's a carbohydrate, maybe there's like some salad, you will finish one area of your plate or one type of food. You'll eat the whole thing and then you'll move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so if you've got a salad on your plate and you're trying to get more salad into your system, you'll probably start with a salad, I've noticed lately. And you'll eat the whole salad on your plate, even if there's a hot piece of meat. And in my mind, I'm thinking, don't you want to move on to that meat while it's still hot? You would prefer to finish the salad first and then move on to the meat, which you're looking forward to and you want to really savor. You want the whole piece at once.
Yeah, so if I know, the thing is that I often crave, I try to listen to the cravings of my body. The reason I'm doing this is because I know that there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast. They often wonder what dieting is like on the mission field. I want to share with you what it's like to hold pretty strong. For almost 4 years, I've been on what we call the keto diet. Most people have heard of it by now. And I want to just share with you my experience of being on the keto diet for almost 4 years, over 3 years now.
So should we just, for the sake of the listeners, those who may not have heard of the keto diet, should we clarify what that is?
Yeah, that would be good.
So within the keto diet, what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep your ketones up at a certain level, and ketones in your body, goodness gracious, I should not have gotten onto this subject because I don't really have enough information to share with you about ketones. But really what you're trying to do is achieve a stability within your blood sugar, that your blood sugar doesn't have spikes, because the spiking of your blood sugar, correct me if I'm wrong, will cause your body to produce more goodness gracious, what's it called? The stuff that diabetics will take, will have to have shots of. Why did I lose that word?
Yeah, I forgot it as well. But basically, it's producing sugar in your blood.
Yeah.
And so, which the word is in Latin.
No, not blood sugar. It's trying to bring your blood sugar down.
No, but your body needs energy. And
yes.
Normal people have energy made from they get the sugar from their body, whether that sugar comes from carbohydrates or from raw sugar or whatever.
Insulin, of course. Insulin.
Yes.
Silly me.
Yes.
How did I forget that word?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's the problem that your body can run into is that if you have a lot of spikes,
we're not doctors. We're not trying to sell anybody on anything. We're not trying to tell you one of the worst things, and one of the reasons I don't bring this up too much is because when people start new diets, they usually become food Nazis, and they're annoying to be around. Like once they learn a little bit about how to eat healthy, then they start criticizing everybody around them for what they eat. And they're like, oh, you're going to drink that Coke? Do you know what's in that Coke? Oh, you're going to eat at McDonald's? Do you know what's in that food? I'm like, heck yeah, I know what's in that food. It's all goodness. And it tastes amazing. And yes, I drink a lot of like Coke Zero. You know I drink a lot of Coke Zero.
Yeah.
But about 4 years ago, and you were much, much earlier than me, you started a kind of a regimen of eating where you cut out sugar and carbohydrates.
Yes.
And the reason why you did that is because you wanted your body to be in almost like a fasting mode where it gets its energy, where your body, instead of using sugar and carbohydrates as its main energy source, starts to use your body's own fat for its energy source. And so you started to do things like eat steak. You started to focus more on like meat in your diet.
Right. So one of the problems that a lot of people on the typical Western diet, and now we're talking about the way of eating, not as a diet. Yeah. So the problem that you often have is that you end up filling up very heavily with carbohydrates, whether that comes from bread or rice or
which is the base of the food pyramid. That is the Western diet recommendation, that you get most of your calories from carbohydrates, cereals, grains, and breads. And these things actually produce a lot of sugar in your body and your body runs off of that sugar, off that carbohydrates. And when you don't use it, then of course it's stored as fat. So anyway, I'm just watching you, and I'm like, no, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense, because you're eating a lot of fat, you're eating a lot of butter. That's not good for you. I don't care what science you've read, that's not good for you. That was my attitude.
Yes. Yeah, and so I was 37 years old when I really started delving deeper into the keto diet,
and Sweden was kind of the pioneer.
Yes,
and at that time it was not called keto, it was called LCHF in Sweden,
which stands for low carb, high fat.
Yeah.
And so for a period of time, one thing, of course, that attracted me initially was that you do end up losing a large amount of weight very quickly in the beginning phases. Very few people do not have this reaction within their body. And so you do end up losing quite a bit. And at the time, that's all I was really interested in, was I just need to drop some of this weight. Just like Eugene said about liking to eat more, and how some of these Marines or military people who have spent a lot of their lives doing high activity and a high activity level, they were able to eat more during that time. But then once they dropped their activity levels, they were still in that mode of wanting to keep eating the same amounts. The same thing happened to me while I was pregnant. And so obviously, when you're pregnant, the common saying, kind of tongue-in-cheek, is you're eating for two. And it really felt that way, because up until I was pregnant for the first time, I had never felt this just intense hunger. When we would drive by restaurants, and I would see billboards, I felt like I was starving the entire time that I was pregnant. And I hated it, because my whole life, food had not really been that big of a deal for me. I had eaten just for the sake of fuel, or, because you're supposed to eat. And so I remember getting really angry, because I'd wake up at 3 a.m. in the middle of the night and just be starving and have to get up and fix a bagel or something. And so the same thing had happened to me then during those pregnancies, was that I got used to eating more and more and more as the years went on. And I think carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates.
You stayed pretty slim even throughout your pregnancy, even after your pregnancy, because then you were breastfeeding. So it was almost like the food that you were putting into your mouth. I got
away with it.
Yeah, the food that you was putting out into your mouth was being sucked out, and by our boys.
Quite literally. But anyway, let's not pay attention to that. So that's what happened to me, and so I got to a point where it was, first of all, I was starting to have some knee issues, some knee pain. And I realized that the weight that I was carrying on my body, it just wasn't sustainable for my long-term health. I was starting to experience some health issues with my weight. And so I wanted to do something about it. And I tried the shakes, and don't want to ever do that again. And I think that's been one of the main factors that has kept me on the keto diet, is that I don't want to get to a weight where I have to go on some starvation diet anytime again in my life. And it's really been quite the journey. I think that a big turning point for me was that I had always had this mindset of a diet was a diet, which means you do whatever you have to do to get yourself to a certain weight level. And then once you're happy with it, then you can go back to the way you always ate. And you'll see that in a lot of people, that they get on to some type of program where they learn this whole new way of, whether it's a new way of eating, or it's supplements, or, these meal replacement strategies. And they'll suddenly lose a huge amount of weight within a very short time period. And these days, when I see that happen, I always think in the back of my mind, okay, let's wait. Let's wait for about 3 years and see, are you still at that weight level in about 3 years? Because my guess is that most of those people have adopted a lifestyle during their diet that they do not want to maintain for the rest of their life. So keto for us became something that we felt we could hold on to and keep doing for the rest of our lives.
When I first started, I was like, oh, I'll try it and see, because I always told myself I'm never going to diet. But if I ever do, I'm going to do your diet. fan, because a diet that involves steak and bacon and butter, yes, please. So I
should say though that bacon is not good for you, even on the keto diet, unless you buy it from like a butcher, not the Oscar Mayer, stuff that has all the nitrates and all the.
Okay, we're not trying to tell people what's good for them, what's not. We're just trying to share what worked for us and what didn't.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to share what, I've been doing for almost 4 years now. And so I remember the very first day I traveled to China. This was over 3.5 years ago. I traveled into China and I decided, okay, I'm going to do this, and I even said, it'll probably only go on for about a month or so. Like, I don't know how long I can do this, but I'm going to try it. And so I remember getting into my room in China and thinking, man, what? I can't eat pizza. I can't eat fries. I can't eat bread. What can I have? And I had a Coke Zero, a steak, and lobster tail. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best diet ever. And then the next morning, because at that time I was still eating, more than one meal a day. Now I'm kind of into one meal a day kind of thing. So I went to McDonald's and I went and I got a Egg McMuffin. And I remember taking the muffin off, which at that time seemed so good. My body craved that muffin. And I rejected the muffin and I ate and I found that after a while, I was not being satiated. And I remember reading all this stuff and watching all these videos saying that how satiated you would feel from fats. And my mind told me my meal was not complete without a starch.
Right.
Without bread, without fries, without hash brown.
Without rice.
Or
pasta.
Especially in China. So I'm traveling in China and I've just written off rice. I mean, that's basically most of your food. And so I didn't think that I would last very long. But one of the things that I've learned along the way is that meat, fat, dark green leafy vegetables have been my savior in China. And that's what I've basically been living off of. When I'm traveling, I try to find the fatty pieces of meat. And those are things that I usually try to avoid in the beginning. Like, my whole life has been avoid fat, avoid butter, avoid, all of these things that are considered high cholesterol. So what has high cholesterol? Bacon has high cholesterol. Eggs have high cholesterol.
They cause
high cholesterol.
Your body.
Yeah, they cause high cholesterol, and that leads to heart disease. And
Right.
so I felt like if I eat eggs, if I eat bacon, if I eat fat of the meat, if I eat the fatty part of the meat, I'm going to have a heart attack.
Right. That was so-called established science.
Yes.
For most of our life, and definitely for the entirety of our parents' lives. Our parents' generation really grew up with that mentality of, you've got to try to cut fat everywhere you possibly can. Margarine, anyone? Goodness gracious, right?
Yeah, I grew up on only margarine. So I only grew up on margarine. And one of the things that I found just really quickly for everybody, because yes, I did lose the weight and I am pretty loyal to this way of eating now. Like, I
Quite
have,
consistent, yes.
I will have maybe a cheat day once a week, once every 2 weeks, sometimes once a month. I will have a cheat day. And when I say a cheat day, I will have things, that have carbohydrates, that have sugar, that have pasta, rice, those kind of things. But I'm pretty dedicated to this way of living. And let me tell you the reason why. After the first month, and the first month sucked. That first month, they say that you get the keto flu for like the first week or two. I had it for like a month. And I've never had a headache in my life. And I had a headache all the time when I first started keto.
And even worse, you had the kind of a foggy head.
Yeah, I had a foggy head, and I need my energy.
Yes.
I need to travel. I need to write. I need to be clear-minded. And so I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this. And the good thing was that there was a lot of information out there that called this the keto flu. I was able to identify it as that. And so it wasn't a surprise. It was something that I anticipated, but I didn't know if it was going to go away. And it did. I don't think there's anybody that would say, I'm low on energy these days. Like I'm
No.
pretty active. I'm pretty physically active. I'm usually biking, running, jogging, skiing. I write every day. For those that don't know, I'm writing articles every day. I'm writing proposals. I'm writing project reports. I'm writing books, like books as in plural. I'm writing things for our videos. So I need to have a clear mental strength on a daily basis. And I feel like I have more energy these days than I ever have from my body feeding off of fat. And so I have a system now down where I feed off of where my body runs on fat. So I need to be able to keep a lot of fat. And I can tell when I am low on fat because I get low on energy. As soon as I start throwing fatty things into my body, my brain feeds off of it and it's just sparking on all cylinders. But I started to notice, so this is, again, we are not medical professionals in any shape, form, or fashion.
Or experts on the
We're
subject.
experts on the subject, as is clear. I mean, we're fumbling around looking for terms. We rarely talk about it, but we do live on it. So I mean,
Yes.
even though we're not professionals, this is our lifestyle.
Yeah.
And when I say our lifestyle, we don't just watch what we eat. We monitor. We are regularly, almost every day, if not every day, at least every couple of days, we take blood samples and do ketone level tests on our body to make sure that we haven't fed something to ourselves that we were not aware of what was in that food. And we're more natural than we've ever been. I used to eat a lot of junk food, a lot of prepackaged food. Now I barely touch prepackaged food.
Yeah.
Now I do a lot of natural food. Almost everything I eat now is straight off of from the fresh shelf. So I mean, we eat a lot of fresh vegetables, a lot of fresh meats. Fresh fish is what we've been basically living on for the last 3 weeks. So fish and like Greek salad type thing with heavy on cucumbers, not a lot of like lettuce. We don't do a lot of lettuce.
Yeah, no, more kind of cucumbers and some tomatoes, not a whole lot. Those have some carbs in them as well, but yeah, just try to
Fatty
stay-
cheese, fatty oil. We went through over, I would say, so we bought, when we first came to Sweden during this time where we stayed in our cabin in the north, we bought an entire, I don't know what the size of it was, but it was the bigger size of olive oil. In 10 days, we went through that entire thing and went and bought a smaller size of olive oil. And then in 2 days, went through that.
Oh, did we really?
Yes. So
I wasn't paying attention.
I eat a lot of olive
Eugene
oil.
usually does the cooking when
Yes.
we're together. So
I love to cook. I do all of the cooking. I use only fresh ingredients. Olive oil is something that I'm very generous with. There was a heart doctor that I followed online for a while, and he actually had this saying that I've kind of adopted in my life, which is most food is just a vehicle to get more olive oil into your body. And this was a heart specialist. Of course, you cannot live on olive oil or fat if you have carbs as a part of your diet. That's a deadly disease. High carbs, no fat works. High fat, high carbs is a dangerous recipe. High fat, no carbs also works, but you can't mix the two. The mixing of the two is just a dangerous, and that's, I think, where a lot of people get in trouble with the ketone diet, is they eat a lot of high fat,
keto diet.
or the keto diet. They eat a lot of high fat, and then they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to slip in some bread and some carbs over here, and you can't do that. It's deadly.
Well, I think if I speak more from like the hormonal perspective for females especially, that we have certain days and in the months and perhaps weeks and even months when the carbs really do give a certain sense of comfort in life, and there does tend to be this temptation of, oh, I'll just do a cheat day or maybe even just a cheat meal, and that then expands into a cheat day or a cheat week or a cheat month, and suddenly you're so far off the wagon that starting it up again sounds like a huge ordeal. And
During the
so-
holidays, I've done couple of cheat days in a row?
The one time I think it was last Christmas, or was it the Christmas before? I think it was last Christmas when I said, okay, honey, I want you to do 5 cheat days with me in a row. And we did 5 days. And by day 4, you were so ill.
Yeah.
You were so uncomfortable.
Yep.
And
I get messed up. My body, even after one day of cheating.
Cinnamon rolls.
Oh, this freaking Amish, man! They make these cinnamon rolls that are laced with cocaine.
Yes, they're so stinking good. They're amazing.
So now these days, if I introduce carbs to my system rejects them. Yeah. So now, and as I'm traveling on the mission field, I spend a lot of time in the Middle East, in Africa, in Asia, traveling around in China, traveling around in Sudan, traveling around in Iraq. I have really been able to maintain a pretty healthy diet that focuses either on very heavy green vegetables or meats and fats. And that has been okay. It's been more expensive than getting potatoes or bread or vegetables. I can live on only vegetables as long as those are not root vegetables, as long as those are not vegetables that have a lot of carbs. But while living on the mission field, I know a lot of people are thinking that, when I travel, I cannot maintain this diet. I travel more than anybody probably listening to this podcast, and I maintain a pretty strict adherence to the ketone diet.
Yeah. Something that's been really important for me and that I've definitely been able to tell a difference in, because I started the keto diet on my own, and I did it for several years by myself, but with very moderate success, in that I would lose weight, I would gain it again, I would stay on the keto way of eating, and then I'd jump off of it, and I'd be off for several months, and I just couldn't make up my mind. But it really, really helped when we decided to do it together. And that's been very, it's just been something really fun that we've kind of undertaken together as a married couple, that we've decided that we're going to eat the same things. And, it gets just really complicated, a family too, if there's one person who's eating one way and then another person who's eating another way. Like sometimes you might have like 3 or 4 meals active to be fixed at every meal time for people. And I did go through that for a while. I mean, I was eating one way, Eugene was eating the other way, and then our boys sometimes would, be picky about what they wanted to eat. So it felt like, my goodness, are we really even a family here? Like, we're all eating all the different.
Luckily, none of us have any food allergens.
Yes.
You don't have a food allergy. I don't have a food allergy. None of our boys have never had food allergies.
Yeah.
Our only problem with food is that we like it too much, and we eat a lot of it. And when we get what we like, we eat a lot of what we like. A lot of our enjoyment comes from food. Like, in some ways, I'm a foodie. Like, I love food, and I love to talk about details of food, and I will make decisions on where I travel to based solely on food.
Yes. And those of you who know Eugene personally also are aware of the fact that he gets very passionate when he talks about his favorite food joints. Or,
yes.
And
they turn into my office. So everybody knows, like, if you were going to come and meet me, we don't go to an office. They will come to my favorite restaurant, and we'll sit down and we'll have, several hour meetings at the restaurant where I love to meet.
Around a plate of food.
Around plates.
Yes, of course.
So, and sometimes it'll be something that I miss. Like, if I haven't been in Pakistan for a while, I'll go to barbecue tonight, and I'll be there for a very long time. And I'll be there. I got kicked out of a restaurant in Dubai together with Bethany. So I was with Bethany, who is our director for our British office. We got kicked out of a restaurant in Dubai because we were there for more than 3 hours. Bethany was not eating.
They started getting worried.
Bethany was not the problem.
No,
the problem was me. Barbara from Iraq came and visited me in Dubai, and we went to a restaurant. We were at that restaurant for I kid you not, for over 8 hours.
Wow.
One restaurant. Do you know what restaurant that was?
No.
Denny's. And I had 3 meals.
Was that one of your cheat days? Did you have pancakes?
Yep.
That's one of the things we dream about. So you do on the keto diet, if there are certain carb heavy foods that you've had that have been a part of your life forever, you do end up having those cravings, and it's totally fine, or we have found it to be totally fine for us to have a cheat day here and there and really enjoying that cheat day, but then also enjoying the aftermath of getting back to the keto diet. There's something that happens when you eat keto foods, at least I found to be true, is that I just find there to be a lot more flavor in food. And if I eat carbs for an extended period of time, like a very heavy or carb heavy diet, I start to lose enjoyment in my food.
Yeah, and I got people that are writing to me and asking me, are you still on it? And I often have to say, I don't know if I can leave it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can leave it because I enjoy now the foods that I eat. And in the beginning, you and I both talked about this. In the beginning, we tried to look for things that replaced things.
Yes.
So we tried to look for bread substitute.
A lot of
pasta.
almond flour.
Yep.
and coconut flour. I would bake bread.
Fathead pizza.
Yes, we would have a pizza base that we would make out of almond flour, or you can do it in all kinds of different ways, often with cheese or cream cheese or whatever. I would make blueberry muffins with almond flour and then a sugar substitute. I do find that I don't use the sugar substitute more than like once every couple or 3 months for some very specific thing.
Yeah, we completely got away from that desire to even substitute rice, to
Yes.
substitute pasta,
Yes.
to substitute bread, to substitute. Now, now we have learned a different way of eating that doesn't involve the desire for carbs at all.
Yeah, and that's really where so much of the battle and where so many different types of battles are really waged is in our minds.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of getting your mindset right. And that can take time, and it did for us too.
It did, and and it wasn't even on purpose. We just naturally started to gravitate towards certain foods. And last year in 2020, there was a period of time where I was basically only carnivore. I was only eating meat, and I really enjoyed it. So I only ate meat. That's outside of dark chocolate, wine, and cheese every night. So in the evening, I would have a little bit of cheese, a little bit of dark chocolate, and a little bit of wine. But other than that, my main source of calories was meat, steak specifically. So I was eating steak every day.
Yeah, the carnivore diet was interesting. I did it as well with you at the time. And I think it was probably easier for you just because, like I had described in the earlier part of the podcast, you're so used to just concentrating on one item on your plate. And so oftentimes, you might just have one thing. Let's say that if we pick steaks, you would just put the steak on the plate and that was your meal. And then you might move on to something after you had finished the whole steak. Whereas for me, I've always longed for more flavors on my plate, and I like to mix them even, on my fork. I like to have several different things on there. And so
Yeah.
it's more challenging for me.
You
to
also
just stick to one thing.
you and your girlfriends in Hong Kong, for instance, will do this high tea time.
Yeah.
And you've
Love
convinced me to come at one time.
Oh, did I?
But the high tea is basically where they have all these little things.
Like little finger sandwiches.
Yeah.
And like macarons and all kinds of sweet things and savory things.
Colorful, small, little bite-sized.
Bite-sized.
Everything is bite-sized. And I kid you not, I have high anxiety. Like the idea of all these different flavors and everything makes my heart beat faster, and I want to throw plates. Like, stop cutting up the food. I don't want little bites. I want big steak. Like, I want big portions. I want one solid big portion of potatoes, one big solid portion of meat, not these little here, little bit of blue here, little bit of pink here, because it really is also color coordinated. Like all these colors, and your eyes light up.
It has to look pretty.
Yeah.
I like pretty things
And so
on my plate.
you and your friends, you really like that. So for me, the carnivore diet was perfect. And I started getting ripped without even working out. I was like, holy cow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
but it was something that you were not able to continue on to do.
Yeah, and I did get a little concerned because we had heard some people that we trust and respect, whether it was on YouTube or speaking to some people saying that, this is a viable way of dieting or of living long term. But we had never really done the research ourselves per se. And I was a little concerned about this, like the fact that we started really eating not just a lot of meat, but all of it was red meat. We were basically just eating beef every single day.
And the research that I did, the research that I did said that basically within red beef, because I eat a lot of raw red beef,
Red meat.
you have so much micronutrients that you don't even need to take substitutes for anything like any sort of mineral or vitamin substitute, because you can really get everything from inside, but it's got to be raw. You can't cook it all the way through, or else you kill a lot of those micronutrients. Anyway, we did that for a while, and then I actually did it for several months and enjoyed it. But then we started to slowly introduce dark green vegetables back into our lives. Different types of fish and butter and cheeses. So those things kind of came back.
Yeah,
But
and I do like this better. I like having a variety of things, not just to eat, but for my body to consume, to process. And I do have a better feeling about it, whatever that means.
yeah,
But it feels, if you want to overuse that word healthy, it feels healthier.
I can tell you that I use, and you can say, you can be a witness to this.
Yeah.
I used to have really bad outbreaks from the time that I was a small boy. From the earliest memory that I have, every 6 weeks my mouth would break out with mouth ulcers. So I would have these canker sores in my mouth, and on my gums, on my tongue, all inside of my mouth. And every 6 weeks, I would just feel this misery of having a painful. And sometimes, if I had high stress, if I skipped a couple meals, I would really suffer.
I remember how you used to hate, well, you still hate airplane food.
Yeah.
And so you often wouldn't eat at all when we would travel. And I remember one time arriving in California, and we had just flown from Hong Kong. And we were driving, and you had, I think we counted 14.
Yeah, 14 or 16,
in your mouth. I literally saw 14 in there, and you were in such pain.
I couldn't talk.
You couldn't talk, and you were just, we drove from one CVS or Walmart or whatever drugstore to another, trying to find something that would help, that would give you and alleviate some of that pain.
Yep.
And so it was incredible, the fact that once we started on the keto diet, you haven't had one.
Not even one in almost 4 years. Not even one. So that was amazing, and I didn't even connect it until I think a couple months later. I'm like, holy cow, I haven't had even one canker sore. This is amazing. And I never connected the two until after about a 6-month period, and I still didn't have one. I'm like, this has to be connected.
Another connection to that is also that you used to have a very, very acidic breath.
Yeah.
And
rancid. Rancid.
It was really bad.
I had to have a special mouthwash.
Yeah. And even that would sometimes not help.
Yeah.
And so, but the connection for me was that I think that was also a sign of your body being very acidic. And the acidic, or the acid, whatever acids in your body, were the things that were causing those ulcers in your mouth.
Yep. And now, after I got rid of carbs, I have both that acidic, I don't have to use that special mouthwash at all anymore.
Yeah.
I can come off of a plane. Usually, if I'd sleep on a plane, I would wake up with morning breath, really like dragon breath, coming off of an airplane. So I always had to have breath mints with me whenever, I traveled. And the other thing is that while I was in the Marine Corps, I got promoted, and during a promotion, you would have to go through what's called the gauntlet. And in the gauntlet, whenever you would get promoted, people would punch you in the arm. Well, I had one guy by the name of Palafox missed my arm, connected full on with my jaw, and basically my jaw was out of place from that moment on for the rest of my life. And anytime I opened up my mouth really wide, like to eat an apple or anything that required me to open up my mouth wide, my jaw would pop. It no longer does that. The other thing is that my body used to shake. Whenever I would get low on blood sugar, my body would start to shake, and that's hereditary. My family, my grandmother, my great grandmother, they just naturally shake really bad, and I knew that was coming on for me as well.
Like the tremors.
The tremors, yep. And so whenever I would be without food for a certain amount of time, I would get tremors. That's gone.
Yep.
I would also used to get hangry. Like my anger was very tightly, connected to my eating. Like if I missed a meal, I would really start to get angry. Now, again, that's another thing. I often miss a meal.
Yes.
I will eat once a day for the most part. I eat about once a day.
Now that once a day might stretch into a 4-hour period, mind you. But...
Yes. Yep, but I eat until I'm full.
Yeah.
So I still don't do portion control. And I might fight over 5 pounds, maybe 10 pounds, but I'm way down from what I was when I first started keto. And I'm at the weight that I was when I was in the Marine Corps. Now in the Marine Corps, of course, I was mainly muscle. I'm not as tone or as muscle dense as I was when I was in the Marine Corps. But weight-wise, I'm still about the same weight as I was when I was in the Marine Corps. I'm still wearing the same size pants as I was over 20 years ago when I was in the Marine Corps.
Well, one thing that I do have to clarify or, be honest about is that when I first started the keto diet, so that's almost 10 years ago, and obviously have been off of it for periods of time, sometimes as long as a year or two, before you and I started in together, and now have been consistently pretty much going for the last 4 years. It has gotten much harder to gain weight. And back in those days, when I first started, as soon as I started dropping those carbs, I could lose up to 12 pounds in a week easily. And that no longer happens. And so the weight is harder to shake now. If I've gone on a period of cheating or whatever you want to call it, if I've been eating more carbs for a while, getting that weight off again is much more challenging now. And so we do also incorporate fasting into our diet. And it's not just about the weight, it's also about it being really good. There's been a lot of research done in recent years about fasting being very, very good for you in many different aspects of your life. And so that's something that we do. We do intermittent fasting, which means that we eat within a short period of time each day, and no more, not before and not after that. And then the other thing we do is when we are able to, if we are in one place for a while and life has kind of started to get stabilized, we do try to incorporate like extended fasting, whether that's 1 day or 2 days of fasting.
And when we say 1 day, it's actually pretty close to 40 hours.
Right.
We do like a 40-hour fast where we will eat lunch on 1 day or even an evening meal on 1 day. And then we will go into the next day without eating that entire day. And then we will not eat again until like lunchtime. So
it's 2 nights, 2 nights and 1 full day.
Yes, 2 nights, 1 full day, and then up until lunch on the third day.
Yes. And so we've done that and really enjoyed that part of, kind of healthy living. I do believe that no matter what type of eating you do, occasional fasting is very, very good for you. And
we just read so much about it.
Yeah.
We've enjoyed it. And I think that before, fasting was very difficult for us.
Yes.
But one of the things that's having this LCHF or keto diet or however you want to call it, one of the things now is that we're not bothered by fasting. And in fact, our last fasting day, we did over, I think, a 30K bike ride.
Yeah.
We often do quite vigorous workouts.
Yes.
I will still write my articles. Nobody knows I'm fasting. I won't tell anybody that I'm fasting. Only you and I know
Right.
that we're fasting. And we only really suffer one period of time. And that's usually from 6 p.m. till 10 p.m. The night.
That's when the evening comes.
Yeah.
I don't know what there is about what it is about the evenings, but that's when I want to eat.
Yes.
And it's
Especially if we're
more
watching a
my
good
thing.
movie.
Yeah.
Like if we're watching a good movie, just something about a good movie and food go together for me.
Absolutely. But yeah, these are some of the things that we've done that have worked for us. They might not work for you. They possibly, or you probably won't.
And you might be listening to this podcast and think, you know what? There's no way I would do that to my body. You know, eating once a day, that can't be healthy for you. Eating fat and butter and meat all the time, that can't be good for you. And if you are a person that's listening to this podcast and you're a vegetarian or you're a vegan and that works for you, then yeah, then keep doing that.
Those.
And I tell you, I think being a vegetarian or a vegan could work out a lot easier for you while being on the mission field. Because being on the mission field in poor countries, in third world nations, it's a lot easier to get your hands on vegetables and veggies than it is meat and fat. I mean, that's one of the reasons why so many people are starving, right? Because they don't have access to like meats and fats, and so they focus more on breads, grains, and veggies. But for me, I just wanted to share, this was kind of, I go through this on a daily basis. I go through this on a weekly basis. It's not really a challenge for me. It's not been a burden for me to eat this lifestyle, eat this way. Actually, it's been quite a joy. I've enjoyed it a lot. I can also say that I try to stay away from store-bought alternatives. So even now, my wife and I are traveling. We bought these like Slim Fast chocolate mint. What are they? We got them right here.
Yeah, Slim Fast Keto Fat Bomb snack cups. And well, it does say there's some coconut oil MCTs in there. They're 1 gram net carb.
On the keto diet.
Yeah, MCT oils are really, really good, supposedly for your brain. So.
And they say that it's 1
that.
net carb, so you can eat them on the keto diet and not go above the. I try to stay under 25 carbs per day. That's kind of where I'm at.
But the problem with things like Slim Fast, so if you start reading some of these ingredients, you've got chocolate flavored coating. It's not chocolate, it's chocolate flavored.
Yeah.
And there's, all kinds of different sweeteners, artificial and natural sweeteners. And in the long term, like we like to try some of these keto products when we're in the US.
Sometimes, yeah. When we're in the U.S., that's where they really are.
This is where
They're in
we bought
America.
these. We had some left over because we were in the U.S. over the summer. And so we had some leftovers and we didn't want to leave
Well,
them.
it's October now. It's October and we still have them.
We still have them, and they're probably just as good. And that's not a great indicator of how
and that's one of the things,
so-called natural they are.
That's what I've really liked about our time on keto is that we eat all natural foods. And in the U.S., they try to sell you on all these alternatives like, oh, you don't need rice, we can make fake rice. Or you don't need bread, we can make keto bread. And you don't need treats, we can make keto treats. But there's so much chemicals, so many unnatural things that are used to make those. I just stay with the natural stuff for the most part. We do eat dark chocolate. 70% is as low as I go, but I like to stay above 80 if I can. It's where I really enjoy the chocolates. And I have come to the conclusion I would rather have real chocolate, dark chocolate, than this.
Yeah. So we pulled it out. It's been in our suitcase for a while, and I don't think it's going to get eaten. I think it's going to end up in the trash.
I think it'll end up in the trash.
So
just because, I mean, I'm not a person that is, I need to have this kind of organic food and this kind of organic food. I'm not that kind of person. But on the same token, if I can't pronounce it,
Yeah.
I don't like putting it in my body.
Except for your Coke Zero
Except for
habit.
my Coke Zero habit. Coke Zero is the one vice that I love to have.
Yeah.
So on fasting days, I also fast Coke Zero. But when I eat, I love my food with Coke Zero. So anyway, for those of you that were wondering, for those of you that were curious, and for those of you that don't care, we just wanted to share with you
If you don't care, you probably turned this podcast off a while
a
ago.
long time ago. But, I wanted to do this one together with my wife because we have done this for the last almost 4 years.
It's been our journey together.
It has been. And I just wanted to share with you information. We have nothing to sell you. We have no reason
There's
to
no
be,
products, there's no
Nope.
books, there's no material.
we don't even have a desire to be right. So if we find out 10 years from now that this was all wrong, we'll say, oh, okay, we screwed the pooch on that one. But right now, this has been a pretty healthy experience that we've had. We've enjoyed the foods, we've enjoyed the feeling of our bodies. And
Yeah.
by the way, let me throw in this. Almost 2 of those years, so over half of the time that we've been on the keto diet, there's been a worldwide pandemic.
Yeah.
And we've never been sick. We might still
True.
get sick, but we've never been sick. So I haven't had a flu, I haven't had a cold, I haven't had a cough, I haven't had COVID,
Yeah.
nothing.
And I used to get sick all the time. I'd get sick every single year
Every
with the
season.
annual,
Yep.
Well, at least in the spring and in the fall. So I'd always have a cold, and haven't had a cold for several years.
And I'm
now.
not saying it's connected with keto, but I have not been sick since I've been on keto.
Yeah. One other thing that I could throw in there is that some of our listeners might not be aware of this, but from what I have read, I've done a lot of kind of digging about the source of my arthritis pain in the last several years, and I have found that lowering the amount of sugar that I have in my diet has a massive connection to lesser arthritis pains. So if I've been eating more a carb heavier diet, eating more sugar, I feel a difference in my joints, in my knees, almost within a day.
Yeah, just share about that really quick, because you have hereditary
Yes.
arthritis.
Yes, I have hereditary arthritis. It's been getting worse within the last, I would say, about 3 to 4 years.
You've had surgery?
Yes, I've had surgery, but the surgery was basically just to go. It was keyhole surgery, and they went in and just kind of cleaned things up there inside my knees.
Basically have nothing between your joints. And
Yeah, at least in my right knee, it's bone on bone at this point, and so really have been suffering from increased pain for the last couple of years. And the surgery was supposed to really help, and they said there's no way it's going to make things worse. Unfortunately, the surgery did make it
much worse.
Everyone told me, because another thing I had was a torn meniscus, and so they went in to try to clean that up a little bit as well. And they did some type of a thing where they took some of my blood and they spun it around at really high rotations, and then they injected it back into my knee. So there was all these kind of experimental things that they did all at once during my surgery, and none of them helped. In fact, I was quite a bit worse for about a year before things started.
And when
getting
we
better.
say worse, like you could not walk 100 meters without extreme pain.
Yeah.
And
So
it
like
was
within
really
50
bad.
meters, there were times where I would have to, if we thought we were going to walk somewhere, I'd have to turn back around and go back home.
And prior to your surgery, you were hiking about 15K a day in the mountains.
Yes.
Sometimes pretty aggressively, where we would actually run part of the 15K.
Right.
And we're not talking about, little hills. We're talking about pretty dramatic inclines and declines.
Yes. So there's time periods when I think that I'll never hike again, and then something will happen, and usually it's when I have my diet under control and I'm eating very little sugar, and also putting in a good amount of exercise, of biking. Biking has been super, super helpful. And so if you've got arthritis in your knees, I cannot recommend biking enough to you. Like, get yourself an exercise bike at home if you don't want to do it outside. but it will help. I promise you this. My pain is completely gone when I bike. And it gives me about a day after, if I go for an intense bike ride, I'll be able to gain about a day of minimal pain for even walking or hiking. So it's strange. It's almost like everything gets loosened up and greased up in the joints to where like suddenly the pain isn't there. And then if I don't bike for a few days, then I start having not just pain when I move, but even at night, it'll be just kind of burning, sharp pain in my knees. And so, I really highly recommend biking and squats. Squats are key.
And not being on a carb heavy diet
Yes.
has lowered the inflammation.
Yes.
Not being on a carb heavy diet has also kept your weight under control. And so your knees are not carrying around as much weight
Right.
as you might otherwise be carrying around.
Yeah. And
So-
I mean, I'm coming out of a period where I was not paying attention to my diet, and we were traveling quite a bit, and I just basically got off the wagon. And so now I have some weight to lose. But the nice thing is to know that once you get back into our regular way of life, that weight will eventually drop off.
Yeah,
It always
your
does.
regular way of life is different than my regular way of life. My regular way of life has no regularity.
Right.
So for me, I'm always on the diet because it doesn't really, like if I needed to be stable for me to be on a diet, I would never be on a diet.
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right. I am not the type of person who really enjoys traveling, or not to say that you're a travel addict, because you do this for work purposes, but I would rather stay in one place, and it's easier for me to have consistency in my life. You are much stronger in this area. You're able to be more consistent in every area of your life than I am, just because you have the willpower. But I do feel that the keto diet, us doing it together, for me has been key. And then also kind of dropping that mindset of let's find the alternatives, or like the substitutes
Yep.
that remind us of
Yeah.
pizza or bread or whatever. And not to say that we never do those things, we definitely do, but our regular kind of way of eating these days is salads or warm baked vegetables, or those types of things, and meats.
And
With
2020,
fats.
when most
Plenty
people
of
were
fats.
gaining weight, because we were in one place together,
Yeah.
we actually got down to our lowest weight in like more than 10 years, I think.
Yeah.
During the year of 2020. So while most people were having like the worst health of their life, and this had a lot to do, of course, with the fact that we were in Sweden. We were not in countries that locked down. Sweden did not lock down. We were able to be out on the trails every day outside.
That was amazing.
That made a big difference. So we were able to go skiing every day, hiking every day, biking every day during 2020, while maintaining a relatively healthy diet, exactly what we wanted to have. So we had the diet we wanted to have, we had the fasting schedule that we wanted to have, and we had a relative schedule that we could plan on every day and every week. So that made a big difference. So for those of you that have been asking, how has it been going? We haven't heard you talk about the keto diet. We haven't heard have you fallen off the wagon? For me, no, I've been pretty strict with it. I'm pretty dedicated to it, unless I have a health scare that tells me otherwise. And I have been taking my blood pressure. I do take my ketones on almost a daily basis and measure my blood. I do monitor my heart rate. I do regularly exercise. I do try to keep track of the way that my body reacts to stimuli. And I can tell you that so far, I don't talk about it a lot, but yeah, it is still a very big part of, the way that I travel, the way that I live. And for those of you that, do a lot of travel, for those of you that live on the mission field, for those of you that are thinking about going on the mission field and you're wondering whether you can maintain that kind of lifestyle or not, my experience has been, yes, you can. You can travel, you can live in another country, you can maintain this lifestyle under those circumstances. So I hope that is informative for you. Is there anything you wanted to sign off on?
Nope, I
Yeah.
think I'm good.
So I want to thank you for downloading this Back to Jerusalem podcast. I pray that it was at least some sort of blessing for you. Again, I'm Eugene Bach, coming to you live on delay from somewhere within the borders of Sweden. God bless.